protect your family's wealth. But before we do that, I guess there's three leading questions that we should ask when we sort of move on to this topic. Question number one is, could you meet your mortgage if you or your partner were unable to work? Now, your mortgage is normally the first thing in the forefront of most people's mind in terms of expenditure. If you don't have a mortgage, normally your rent that you need to worry about, and just asking yourself whether or not you could meet that expenditure if you're unable to work. And if you could, for how long? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months? Those types of questions need to be addressed in terms of looking at how we can protect your wealth to make sure we can maintain what you've got. Question number two is, having access to the best available medical treatment important for you and your family? So if you or your children were to get sick, do you want to make sure you've got access to money to ensure they've got the best available medical treatment possible? Question three is a little bit morbid, but it's something that you should think about, is if you were to die, would you want your family to maintain their current standard of living? In particular, if you've got a dominant income earner, some person in the family or the household's making the majority of the money, if they were to pass away, how's the family going to cope? How's the income going to come in? How's the mortgage going to be paid? How's all the rent going to be paid? How's the school fees in the future going to be paid? So if you were to die, do you want your family to maintain their current standard of living, or at least, and I guess, achieve the standard of living that you expect them to have? So if you tell you and your partner today, you decide that, yeah, we want to have money set aside for school fees, well, then you need to make sure that's covered if something happens to you. The way of protecting your family's wealth, the most logical way is through personal insurance. Now, insurance is really just passing risk from you as an individual onto an insurance company in exchange for a premium. So it's just the passing of risk. Personal insurance, as the name would suggest, covers people. It's different to other forms of insurance. So there's general insurance like home and contents insurance, car insurance. That type of insurance covers things that you can touch, and health insurance, which covers medical expenses. But there's normally always a gap between the medical expenses that you have. So they're the different types of insurance. In relation to personal insurance more specifically, there's three things that you should really consider. Having a young family or as new parents, there's two forms of lump sum payments. Lump sum just means you get a bulk amount of money up front, and one form of ongoing income style payment. So I'll go through them just quickly individually. Life and TPD insurance. TPD stands for Total and Permanent Disability Insurance. It provides a lump sum in the event of death or total and permanent disability. If you suffer total and permanent disability, you are unable to return to work, in a doctor's opinion, ever again. You should, under this circumstance, have enough money to clear your debts, and the proceeds can also be used to help meet future family expenses such as school fees. It can also provide a lump sum to replace future income, but one of the benefits of life and TPD insurance is that it can be funded through your superannuation. So obviously that can be a benefit from both a tax planning perspective in certain circumstances, but also from a cash flow planning perspective, in that it won't eat into your budget to ensure you've got adequate protection in place. The second form of lump sum cover is trauma, or otherwise known as critical illness insurance. It provides a lump sum if you are diagnosed with a serious medical condition. Conditions it covers are things like cancer, heart attack, stroke, severe burns, and the like. Children can also be covered from some policies. The idea of trauma or critical illness insurance is to help meet the out-of-pocket expenses that aren't covered with private health insurance. It also enables the best available medical treatment, so if you need to go get a surgery in some part of the world, you've got process to do that. But also, more importantly, and what I talk to a lot of my clients about, is if you've got a situation where you've got a dominant income earner, you might have some person working full-time, whereas the partner's at home caring for the children. If something happens to the partner who's caring for the children, and the person who's working full-time is most likely going to need to stop working, take time off, and care for the partner as well as the kids until things get back to normal, until full recovery. So really what you do need is to have another lump sum that enables you to do that without the stress of going, geez, how are we going to pay the mortgage next month? Geez, we've got all these bills and medicals coming up. What are we going to do? That's the idea of trauma or critical illness insurance. Obviously it kicks in much earlier because it pays on diagnosis of a medical condition. Income protection, or otherwise known as salary continuance insurance, gives you ongoing income. It provides 75% of your income if you're sick or injured and unable to work. Generally, you must be off work for at least 30 days before being eligible to claim. So if you're sick for a month, you won't be able to claim. If you're sick for 2 months, you'll get paid for the second month, provided you're meeting the conditions of the policy, which generally speaking, undergoing medical treatment or following the instructions of a doctor. It obviously provides ongoing income to meet your living costs, be it your mortgage, your rent, your utility bills, your groceries, what have you. But I think it's essential cover if you're dependent on your income. So if you rely on your income each month, then it's essential that you think about having some level of income protection cover. It can be funded in super, again, to help with cash flow. If you don't fund it within super, you can have it outside of super and it's tax deductible to you. So it's a little bit of a win-win. You just choose whether you can afford it and perhaps you have it outside of super and get the tax deduction. If not, you can put it within a superannuation environment and it's still tax deductible to the fund and still has those cash flow benefits to you. In terms of working out how much cover you need, I mean, I sort of thought I'd just go through just quickly my sort of mindset when I meet clients and give them some sort of recommendations in terms of levels of cover. We'll go through them just quickly individually. Life and TPD insurance. As a general rule, I look to have enough cover to repay all the debts that they've got, so if they've got a mortgage of $500,000, for instance, we want to have at least $500,000 worth of life and TPD insurance to ensure that could be fully repaid. Then on top of that, we look to have an amount of annual living costs multiplied by the number of years until the youngest child is aged 18. So for instance, if you're spending $30,000 a year in living costs as a family and you've got an 8-year-old child, so you've got 10 years until they're age 18, then you need $30,000 times 10 years is $300,000 in addition to the amount to clear debt. So using my example earlier, $500,000 plus $300,000 for the living costs is $800,000 in total. And again, if you're going to think about school fees on top of that, that you know your expenses in the future, your living costs in the future are going to increase, and you're thinking to yourself, I might be spending $15,000 a year over the next 10 years on private school fees, then we'd add another $150,000 to that as well. So we'd have $500,000 for the mortgage, $300,000 for living costs, and $150,000 for private school fees, in the region of $950,000 in that example. In terms of trauma or critical illness insurance, the way I sort of think about that is enough to have a year's worth of your living expenses covered, plus $50,000 to $100,000 as a provision for out-of-pocket medical expenses. Now, working out a provision for out-of-pocket medical expenses is a difficult thing to do. It's a bit of guesswork, but certainly it gives you an additional amount of cash to play with. The reason we have enough for a year's worth of living costs is if something were to happen to you or your partner, such as, heaven forbid, get diagnosed with cancer, and under that circumstance you can take 12 months off to focus on you, on your partner and recovery and looking after the family and the like. So that's the total way we calculate the lump sum for trauma insurance. Income protection or salary continuance insurance is much easier to calculate. The maximum cover that you can have is 75% of your monthly income. So for instance, if your monthly income before tax is $10,000 and the maximum you can have is 75%, then you can have $7,500 per month cover. That's the total amount of cover that you have. With income protection, you get to choose how long you want to wait before you're eligible to claim, either 30, 60 or 90 days, and that's generally where you spend most of your time tailoring a policy to the client's requirements. So that covers strategies to protect your wealth. Now we're just going to touch quickly on some strategies to keep your super